Hi folks, welcome back to this video tutorial. Today we're going to learn about the basic principles of colour mixing and colour theory with the colour wheel as our main point of focus. Materials you'll need to complete this paint along tutorial are something to paint on, such as an A3 piece of acrylic paper. However, in this tutorial I'm working on an A3 canvas art panel, a plate or palette to mix your colours in, a pencil or pen for note taking, a colour wheel template. This can be a circle drawn out in pencil and divided up into segments. Here I'm actually using one I printed out from my home printer to save on time and to make it neat, and this can then be glued down and painted over the top of. You will also require the primary colours blue, yellow and red, as well as some black and white paint. You will want 2 jars of water, some paintbrushes, one medium to small flathead brush and one small rounded brush. The first thing to do is to squeeze out your primary colours, a good splodge of red, blue and yellow, and then a splodge of black and white. Next you want to glue down the colour wheel template, so flip that and then make sure that you apply plenty of glue all around the edges so that it doesn't peel back. Stick it towards the top here, and I'm just putting a little reference off to the left here because you want to make sure that you leave plenty of space below for the other colour mixing later on. If you are in my physical class today, you will see that on the handout that I've given you for the colour wheel, there are indications of where the primary red, primary blue and primary yellow have to go, indicated by either R, B or Y. So the first colour that you lay down, here being red, make sure that you colour it in with the R underneath. Once that's done, then we move on to doing a darker red tone. A tone is basically when you add a darker colour to deepen it. Here we're using black to deepen it, but you can also use brown, greys and dark blues to create darker tones. And to create a lighter colour, this is called a tint. A tint is when a colour is lightened using just white. To keep your brush strokes neat and even, you want to do a nice tight mix of the 2 colours together. The tight mix is when you really just mush the paint mixes in together and you don't see any loose spare strands of paint colours. I haven't hardly used any water on my brush at all. I've just dampened the brush with a little bit of water only, and that stops the paint from running. As we are working on the standard cheap printer paper, which has come out of my home printer, it does bobble slightly. Obviously you could create your diagram of your colour wheel by hand by drawing it in with pencil, but just for the demonstration purpose today I decided to print it to make my life easy. Next, locate exactly where the primary yellow is to be painted. I'm just using sweeping flat brush marks here to make the shape nice and neat. Again, hardly any water so that we stay within our lines, and then we just do the same process after filling that in of going to a deeper yellow tone with a very little black. Make sure that you wash out your brush each time you move to a darker colour or a lighter colour so that we don't muddy our colours. That's very important, and that's also why I suggest using 2 jars of water, one for your darker colours and one for your lighter colours. Having a clean towel that you can also wipe your brush out on after washing your brush is a great idea because it keeps your brush really clean so that we keep those colours true to how they're supposed to be. Again, make sure that you do locate where your blue primary colour goes. It's easy to get a bit carefree and then start painting and lose our track of where colours should be. Please focus and try to stay within your shapes as much as possible. Now that we've painted our 3 primary colours and their tints and tones, we're going to move on to secondary colours. Secondary colours are created by mixing 2 primary colours together. Here I'm starting with a little red and a little blue to make a violet colour or purple. So I'm going to actually paint this closer to the blue because there's more primary blue added to it, so that will be making sense visually. So I'm just painting that in on the same line as the original primary colour was. in the middle there, and then mixing in a little bit of white to make a purple or violet tint, and then washing out the brush and then moving to a purple tone with just a little black. Here I'm mixing up a second purple, but this time with a little more red as it's closer to the primary red on the colour wheel. This is what we call a tertiary colour, where we add an extra amount of primary colour to the secondary colour to sway it where you want it to fit in its colour space on the colour wheel. Moving on to another secondary colour, I'm just mixing primary blue and yellow to make a green. And filling in those spaces, same method applies. The secondary colour in the central ring, and then we move on to making a darker tone with a little black and then a lighter tint with a bit of white. Again, let's visually reinforce your understanding of tertiary colours here. So the colour that gets mixed between the primary blue and our secondary green is going to be more of a bluey green. So we start with our original secondary green and I mix in a little more blue to sway it towards that colour on the colour wheel and look harmonious in terms of its blending effect. Last but not least, we come to the secondary colour of orange. So here, as I mixed up more of a tertiary reddy orange, it's closer to red than it is yellow, I decided to put it on this side closer towards the primary red. And again, washing out the brush and then adding either a tint or a tone to complete that segment, and then mixing over to a slightly more yellow orange on the left hand side to finish it off. To stay on track with the correct order of colour mixing on the wheel, ensure you use this middle ring of colours to show you how light or dark your inner and outer ring colours should be. In these spaces below, we're going to talk about complementary colours. Complementary colours are basically the colours opposite each other on the colour wheel, and provided that they are used in the same colour scheme or side by side, they really make each other stand out and work well together. Here what I'm doing is I'm just going to demonstrate how you can actually blend two complementary colours into each other to create what you call a harmonious colour scheme. So I've mixed up an orange in the first box, and now I'm just going to gradually add some of that primary blue bit by bit in the boxes until I get to our primary blue on the right side. And then I'm going to do the same below, but using complementary colours yellow and purple. What's interesting about this very limited colour palette of just working with the two colours, orange and blue, is that it actually tricks the eye, because if you look at the two colours that are blended in between the orange and blue, the one on the left looks like a brown and the one on the right could sway towards almost a green colour. And those sometimes are used by artists to have a very muted colour palette, and that's something that I'd like to explore in another tutorial based on colour theory moving forward. The next thing I want to teach you is how to mix skin tones. Now this is a very common question I get asked by a lot of students, and the way I do it is to start with a red, a yellow and a white to bring us to a base colour of a pinky peach. And once you've mixed that base colour, then you're free to start mixing in warmer or cooler tones of brown to come up with darker and more variety and varied tones of skin shades. And so another thing to note is that you can see the flow of paint is pliable. I've not added hardly any water to this, and I'm just adding a little pass over of each colour until I get to the right sort of pinky peach shade for a base skin tone. So I'm applying that just as a little visual reference to how to get to that colour, and then we will move on to adding burnt sienna for warmer skin tones and burnt umber for cooler skin tones. When adjusting the skin tone, you want to be very delicate with the amount of paint that you add, and you can warm up the skin tone as well using a little tiny pinprick of red and a little pinprick of yellow. And basically colour matching. So if you've got your subject or reference photo of a portrait or person in front of you, it's really handy just to have that right next to the colours that you are mixing up so that you're sure it's the right skin tone. Also to mention that one person's skin tone isn't the same all over, so obviously because of the 3D form of a human you get shadows in different areas, and for example if you're looking at an ear you get lots of crevices, so if you wanted to create a darker tone you could add little pinpricks of black into your colour mix. Make sure that you tightly mix it up so that you don't have any loose strands of colour, and as you do this little demonstration you want to make sure that you gradually get darker and darker and darker to show your control of your colour mixing, and it's just good practice anyhow to show that level of brush control and mixing control. Here I'm blending white into black to show what value means in terms of art. So value refers to the lightness and darkness of the colour. Now that our basic colour theory board's painted, you may or may not wish to add a few notes to refer back to future reference. I actually like to have one of these boards on display when teaching a painting class to remind students how to achieve certain colour mixes and also remember which colours work best together. Thanks for watching my video folks, and don't forget to stay tuned and also hit that subscribe button.